All right, welcome back to Art 220, CSC SC 220, Film Studies 220, Introduction to 3D Modeling. This is going to be a review of the Bifrost fluid simulations built into Maya. Now, this is a pretty heavy-duty fluid simulation system. Don't try this on your MacBook that's 5 years old or on your, basic PC laptop. You're going to want something with a decent GPU, CPU capability, definitely meeting the minimum requirements, if not more. You could come to our lab and always do these kind of simulations and probably go at about 10 times or 50 times the speed, depending on what system you have at home. But you can create really cool stuff. This is just a little liquid simulation I have kind of coming out of a cube-shaped emitter. I have applied a honey-style shader to it, an AI standard surface shader, and this is just a quick preview of what it could look like in Arnold. And so you can work with colliders, other objects. Right now it's actually hitting the little cone shape and kind of pouring down the cone shape. So I'm going to show you how this all works and just kind of walk you through some of the basics to get you started. That being said, it does take some time to run the simulations and the renders, so please keep that in mind, especially if you have a complex scene. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this, turn off my render view here. And here's what it looks like right now in the simulation mode. I can always bring back the original cube that is the emitter. I just have it hidden in my outliner. That's the cube that it's all pouring out of, but I just hid it from my scene so it didn't become part of the render, right? All right, so how did I do it? Well, let's start a new scene. I'm not going to save that one. And I have this all listed out on the Canvas page right now, so we'll bounce back and forth from this. I just created kind of a list since it's a very, a semi-complex procedure. I wanted to make sure that you kind of had like a step-by-step process here written out. So we'll bounce back and forth on this particular tutorial. Okay, so first thing, we're going to go ahead and create an object that will become the emitter. We don't want to have too much subdivision because the more subdivision, the more little like voxel points are generated. And it's also important to kind of pay attention to the scale of the object. From what I understand, Bifrost measures in meters. Even if you have your units in your main Maya scene, like in centimeters or inches or feet, it measures in meters. And so there's kind of a calculation, a translation that goes on there. So try not to make things too big and watch out on the amount of subdivision. I'm just going to go with like a basic cube like I did in what you were showing there, okay? So let's make that. I'm going to come to my scene here. I'm also just going to add a few things real quick. I'm going to go ahead and add a dome, a sky dome light. I'm going to go to my poly modeling. I'm going to go ahead and add a ground plane just for the light. And I am going to go ahead and add the object that's going to become my emitter. So there it is. Let's move this object up in the air a little bit. I have my workspace. Currently, I had it set to the Bifrost Fluids setting, but you could be in Maya Classic. The more important one is over on the left, switching over to the FX menu set so that you can actually see Bifrost Fluids up in your top menu there, okay? That's a really important detail. All right, so now that I have this, I've raised my object up in the air. Maybe I raised it a little too high. I'm going to bring that down a little bit. So you want to have your object that's going to be the emitter selected. And then you're going to go up to Bifrost Fluids and choose Liquid. And you'll see a whole bunch of stuff just ended up in my outliner. It created this Bifrost Liquid 1 properties, guide properties, emitter props. And even if you unfold Bifrost Liquid 1, you'll see there's a liquid object inside there, which is important because you're going to need to set some different things in there, okay? So all that stuff has been created. I can choose my object. And now we're going to use the timeline just like we did with other liquid simulations or anything with the end particle systems. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And you're not going to see anything. And there's a couple things we have to set first before you see it. It just kind of goes by because it actually did make a little iteration of fluid, but it was there for like one frame and then it was gone. Okay, so this is where we start going through that list of stuff that I have up on the Canvas site. So the first thing we're going to look at is we've scaled it. We're going to select the object. We've created the liquid. Now from the outliner, we're going to choose the Bifrost Liquid 1. And then we're going to go to the liquid properties. So Bifrost Liquid 1 properties. And then we're going to come over here on the right. And you'll see there's two tabs. There's the Bifrost Liquid Properties 1 and the Bifrost Liquid Properties Container. We want the container one. And then if this happens to be folded up, unfold resolution. And in this case, with the size of this particular object and not a lot of subdivision on it or anything like that, we are going to choose, let me go back to that. Let's try out, like by default, it's 0.5. I've been pretty lucky with 0.05 at this size. Now, the lower that number goes, the higher the resolution. Now you can already see there's a whole bunch of little blue dots that have appeared the minute I did that when I set that to 0.05. They disappeared on the preview there. But if I went like 0.03, let's see if they come back. No. Oh, maybe. No, it's still not coming back. But 0.05, let's stick with that. But if you go too low of a number, it's really kind of is almost like the resolution. You're going to really, have a more fluid liquid, but you're going to pay for it in render time. All right, so that's the first step we're going to do. Then let's just go look at this list one more time. So we've brought that down to 0.5, like I put in here. Lower numbers equal higher res, but longer render times. Then we're going to go to the Bifrost Emitter Props 1 and the properties and do continuous emission. So down here a little bit in my outliner, you see Bifrost Emitter Props 1. And right here under properties, we want to turn on continuous emissions. That alone, if I do that now we can see the blue dots, and when I hit play, there they are. They will continuously emit. In the past, Bifrost has sometimes had some problems where like your emissions will disappear and then come back, and often that can be solved by just toggling on and off the continuous emissions button here. So if that ever happens or something just disappears and it doesn't make sense, try coming back to the emitter props and click that on and off. Okay. Now one problem is if I zoom out, you'll notice they just keep going. Like these voxels are just being generated, and they'll keep going into infinity. And even if I can't see them in my scene, the computer has to calculate them, and we don't want that to happen. So one of the things we can do to negate that is we can come up to Bifrost Fluids, and we can go ahead and add what's called a kill plane. So I add a kill plane. You'll see I now have Bifrost kill plane. Now when those voxels hit that kill plane, which is just kind of defaulted to the ground plane area, they will die and they won't continue. So if I start this over and run it again, they're going to stop here. If I hit stop now, it looks like they've hit the ground. If I zoom out, you'll notice, oh, that didn't quite work, did it? Hold on a second. Why is my kill plane not working? Let's try that again. I'm going to try it again. I might not have had the right thing selected when I did the kill plane, so let's just try it real quick. Okay, stop it. Nope, I messed that one up. Let's try it again. So I'm going to delete the kill plane, and I'm going to choose Bifrost Liquid 1, and go down to, I might have, you know what I did? I think I did kill field instead of kill plane. Let's do kill plane. There we go. Let's see if that works. The kill plane's right at the ground level. I think that's working now. Yep. So I had hit kill field accidentally. So there you go. It stops them. It'll really help you with the number of calculations, the rendering, all of that fun stuff, right? All right, let's go back to the list of items that we have here. So we have done continuous emission. You can increase or decrease the point size. So this is on the outliner Bifrost Liquid 1. Outliner Bifrost Liquid 1. And I believe that's under liquid. Yeah. So in the same area, this is an area we're going to deal with. So this is the unfolding of the Bifrost liquid. You'll see there's that little plus sign next to it in the outliner. Liquid 1 here. You can increase or decrease this point size, and that'll kind of change the dynamics of the fluid. Also can increase or decrease render time a little bit, but it will change the kind of like nature of the liquid. So keep in mind that's another one you can play around with in the particle size. And then another one we can do, we're going to talk about, is how we can add a texture to it. But we'll do that in just a little bit. But we are going to come back and talk about Bifrost meshing, and that's what we use to add a texture. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and add a collider. So this is an object that this liquid could collide with, because a lot of you are going to want to like fill a certain shape, or hide this cube inside of, say, we could take the cube and put it inside the like faucet nozzle of like a pipe coming out of a wall that you want water to flow out of. Or it could be at like the top of a creek bed so that the water flows down from a mountain. And then you could just hide the cube and the water will kind of pour out of that source. So you could hide it in a little crack where the water is emerging from, something like that. So I'm going to raise this up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and just create another cube here. We're going to make a little quick bathtub. Whoop. Let's keep going. Yeah, let's widen this guy out a little bit. All right, and let me go ahead and subdivide this a little bit. I'm going to do a little inner extrude. And just kind of making a little trough, right? And let's go back to object mode and just make this whole thing a little deeper. Cool. So now I'm going to fill this with the liquid, right? But before I can do that, I have to choose the cube, and then I choose the Bifrost liquid. I'm holding down Command or Control on my keyboard. And then I'm going to go up to Bifrost Fluids, and I'm going to come down to Collider. And now, when I fill this puppy up, you're going to see what happens. And before I crash, I'm going to go ahead and save real quick. So Bifrost Collider V1. Let's save this to my desktop. And let's see how this looks. It's going to take a second. It's really coming down, but we'll take a look here and see how it looks. There it goes. It just hit the collider floor of that tub. It's starting to fill and flow around and go up the sides. There are a lot of dynamic controls that you can play around with. We'll look at viscosity. I'm not going to look at all of them, but you can do from splash to stickiness to all these different things. But very quickly, we can start filling the bathtub with a liquid, right? And if I go ahead, I can either hit the stop button or I can hit escape on my keyboard. We'll stop the simulation wherever it's at. And then if I go to Arnold here, we should be able to see at least a default kind of liquid. This was the old one. Let's see what it looks like now. There we go. It takes a minute for it to calculate everything, but it has like a nice clear water liquid tone to it right now, which is cool, right? So not too bad. Already getting a pretty good simulation. When that fully rendered out with the Arnold lights and everything, you would really see that tub, that little trough that I've created filled with water. All right. And there are some basic things that you can do to that water. There is a basic Lambert that's on it right now, so you could change some different things. But ultimately, we're going to want to add like a nicer shader to it, and we're going to turn it into a mesh to do that. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything from my list here, though, so let's just go back and take a look. So we've created a collider. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that generate mesh next, right? So, or actually, you know what? I did want to look at one other thing for you, but let's take a look at the liquid. And viscosity is in here somewhere. I always have to take a look for a second. I might be liquid properties. Yep. So under liquid properties over here on the right, you can unfold viscosity. If I increase this, that liquid would come out more like honey. So I could maybe go to like 50 and do the same run again, and it's going to be a lot different, less splashy and more thick. I've seen one at like 500 and it looks like almost like chocolate that is then hardened up afterwards, and or like a lava flow or something like that. So as this goes down, it's not going to splash around as much. And there's all sorts of things from erosion, there's droplets, there's particle distributions, there's all sorts of things. You can already see how the water's kind of staying together as more of a unified pool instead of how it's splashed up that first time all over the place, right? So I'm going to let this go a little bit. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape to stop the simulation. And then I'm going to click back on the liquid, go over to my properties over here, and you will notice that there is, oh, did I click on the right one? Liquid. Oh, I think I have to... There it is. You have to click on the tab in your attributes for Bifrost Liquid Properties container. And in there, there's a thing that says Mesh Cache. And if I go ahead and, or actually, you know what? I think I clicked on the wrong one. Bear with me here. It was actually under just Liquid Shape 1. Don't do the Mesh Cache. Do the Bifrost Meshing. And then Enable. And the minute I do this, I have now converted those voxel sort of simulated liquid points into an actual mesh. And if I come over here in my outliner, I can choose the mesh. You'll see it's actually generated a really nice triangulated mesh. And that's a mesh that I can right-click on, should be able to, and go ahead and assign a new material. And then I could say go to Arnold, and I could say let's add an AI standard surface. It disappeared for a second because it's going to have to re-simulate this whole thing. I'm just going to go to a preset here, and I'm going to do, let's do honey. And replace all selected. And let's run the simulation again. Give it a second here. It does go slower with the meshing, I will say that. So, you just have to kind of roll with it. But it gives you the freedom to add any kind of shader that you could want to that surface. And I haven't tried it yet, but at the end of this, we'll try deleting the history on it and seeing if we can freeze that mesh into an object that then could be edited as well and not be a part of the original Bifrost. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape. Come on. Sometimes when it's doing all this calculation, it takes a second to actually quit. Come on. I don't think it got it. I'm trying to hit the stop button on it. There we go. All right, I must not have hit it the first time. So now I'm going to go and get my Arnold preview here. And let's see what this looks like with the honey texture. There we go. So it has a really nice kind of like thick honey pouring out of my original emitter, right? And then last thing, if people don't want to see the object that I was using as an emitter, I can always take that original cube and just hide it, right? And you can see the liquids inside of it. So you could put that cube inside of any object. There could be a pipe that's hidden inside of, a crack that it's like emerging from in a landscape. There's so many different things you could put this inside of. And then run your simulations and have a lot of fun with it. See, it's still running without that cube being visible. So this is just, a basic introduction to Bifrost. Obviously, it does increase render time. If you want to make you have like a lake or a pond to fill, you're going to need to play around with it. You're probably going to need to increase the size of your timeline quite a bit. So I might need to go up to like 1,000 frames just to give it like enough time to fill up. You could also try looking through your emitter properties and look at some of the emitter props. I'm trying to find what we have here. I was just trying to look. There are definitely some, we're not going to go over it right now, but there's some speed. You want to speed it up, but ultimately your computer has to calculate all this. So when it comes to Bifrost, that's where having a faster computer this water will just flow out. The simulation will flow out so much faster. So there's only so much that you can speed up because it just has to kind of calculate it at the rate that it has to. So, getting something in real time means having a serious GPU or CPU. I think that's everything for this just initial lesson on it. I did say I wanted to try freezing it into an editable object. So let's see if we can just get a little more shape out of it. All right, that's pretty good. Hit the impact. I'm going to go ahead and stop it. All right, and let's go to the mesh, and then we'll go to edit, delete by type, delete history. And let's see if that freezes. I believe it did. We now have a frozen mesh that can be edited and played with in a variety of ways. So, pretty cool stuff. It's a big complex mesh, but I could move that around and have it frozen so I don't have to redo this every time I run my simulation. So again, that was just choosing the mesh object and edit, delete by type, delete history, and then I can have that mesh. I could hide all my other Bifrost liquid stuff, in the background somewhere in case I need it again. So there you go. That's my introduction to Bifrost Fluids. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and as always, thanks for tuning in. All right, good luck.